Every 7 seconds, there's a pile of clothes the height of Mount Everest going into landfill. And she was like, Dad, you can't write that. And I said, well, what do you mean? She goes, you can't lie. I said, that's not a lie. Why would you think that was a lie? She said, because if that was the truth, no kid on the planet would buy from Primark or ASOS or H&M or Zara. You know, Dad, this is apocalypse. It's scary. Everything I've ever done there's never been some huge plan. I never thought for 1 second All Saints would become this global brand. We just wanted to show that we could do something really fucking cool and real rock and roll. Yeah. Take other people's waste and create something amazing.
Perfect, amazing. So welcome to Stuart. Really excited to be here at the Global Innovation Forum. Myself and Max have been talking for quite a while in the background on this. I have a podcast called Masters of Innovation, and this is the Global Innovation Forum. We thought this is a great opportunity to collaborate and have great conversations. So my name's Alex. I'll be the host and compere of this session, but the real star of the show really is Stuart. Stuart's got a really cool background in that you've had quite humble beginnings in your early life in Scotland, but went through to kind of leading kind of menswear design at Reiss, and then obviously the founder of All Saints, one of the biggest kind of fashion brands that I know most people in the room will be familiar with. But now you're onto kind of new exciting things. You know, this concept of a fashion brand that doesn't create any clothing. It's quite an interesting, quite provocative statement, which is quite interesting. But before we kind of get into all of the details of Stuart Trevor today, I wanted to get into just specifically fashion. And why are people so obsessed with fashion, Stuart? What is it about fashion that gets people so excited?
Is this working yet?
I think so.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Hi. So yeah, people ask me that all the time. All my life, I've been asked, why are you so obsessed with fashion? You're not even gay, and all this sort of stuff. The funny thing about fashion is that you wake up in the morning and what you eat is if you eat healthy food, you'll have a healthy life. If you wear interesting clothes, you'll live an interesting life. That's one of my favourite quotes from Vivienne Westwood. And I don't know how. I've always tried to make quite simple clothes, but I always end up falling in love with really beautiful fabrics or a different type of trim or something that's a bit more. And I always feel, actually, when I look at things and I put them on the rail, when they're just really boring and bog standard, I don't get excited about it. So I do try and work out how to put collections together that are more basic. But I've offered them, but generally what everyone wants is something more interesting. It's very important to, I believe, if you want to be a success in life, to make an effort and try and be the best in everything that you do. And if you get up and you put on, a grey hoodie and jogging pants and a pair of shitty old trainers, and you go for a job interview, I mean, you don't have to be wearing a suit, but someone who thinks about what they wear and could be old vintage Levi's and a pair of old brogues or a pair of old Converse and a white t-shirt and a leather jacket. But that person you walks in a room, people are going to be like, wow, they look cool or whatever. And depending on where you're going in life, if you turn up and you've made an effort, you will. The results will come.
Yeah, I think when we initially had this conversation before today, we kind of talked about how it really is how you're perceived, and how you're perceived is how you is, and how you are as an individual. It's also interesting that when I asked you the question previously about what is fashion all about, you said it's all about sex.
Well, it's true. I used to think when I was younger, I remember Markham McLaren and Vivienne Westwood called their shop in the late 70s Sex. And I remember thinking for years, that's really provocative. Obviously, they just wanted to shock people, and I think it worked in the late 70s. But what is sex? Sex is your mum and dad had it. But none of us would be here without sex, and even our grandparents and our great-grandparents, they were attracted to each other,
Of course.
and there must have been something about them. And fashion is also, it's all about sex, isn't it? If you look awful and you don't care about your appearance and you don't, eat healthy and all of these things, you're never going to have I doubt it, a really fabulous sex life or fabulous. You're never going to meet the perfect partner. So for me, growing up as a little kid, I'm not very tall. I was actually quite shy when I was younger, whatever. The idea of putting on an outfit and walking into a room and people go like, "Wow, who is that?"
Yeah.
Then, we one of our mantras, as we talk about quite often, is that especially some of the things that are really cool that we do. Yeah. That if you don't. Whatever you buy, if you don't have a great night, we'll give you your money back. Because generally, if you turn up wearing something really cool that we produce,
you're making a statement.
You make a statement.
You're making a statement. Your perception is out there, and that's quite key.
You don't get the money back for the whole night. Just
for the garments. Just to be clear, I guess in case anyone's the money back guarantee.
Looking for a scam.
I guess so. If we go back to your own personal journey, obviously All Saints, it's a brand that I'm familiar with. You kind of went viral with All Saints kind of before social media, and kids and young people were kind of a big part of that. How did you activate the youth to kind of make All Saints so popular back then?
Everything I've ever done there's never been some huge plan. It was never about money. It was never about trying to. I never thought for 1 second that All Saints would become this global brand. It was just as a young boy, discovered David Bowie, wanted to be David Bowie, and ended up getting, obsessed with clothes and image and customizing my school uniform, and kids in school buying things from me. And what was the question again?
It was how did kids and how did young people
All Saints Days.
All Saints, yeah.
So when I started All Saints, again, I'd done 10 years at Reiss. When I joined them, it was a very boring high street suit retailer that bought in from other designers. And when I left, it was a £50 million business with a huge following because I'd created a concept for them. And then when I did the same with All Saints, it was totally new. But I brought in a partner who had run all the shops for Reiss. We opened shops in Leeds and Manchester, Nottingham, Birmingham, and every one that I opened, I would go to the city and I would, work out where the shop was going to be, build it, employ the staff, and then send them out with a beer map with, All Saints launch parties, all coming to Nottingham, free beer, DJ, discounts, all this sort of stuff. Surreptitiously targeting the equivalent of Gen Z or millennials, because I would send them off to the universities and the colleges and, cool bars or restaurants, and they would all turn. I remember my partner at that time arguing with me, going, "We don't want loads and loads of kids at these things. We want people that are going to spend money. They haven't got any, these students." And of course, within 4 years, these kids are all earning 40, 50 grand a year. Where did they spend all their money? It was in
on
All
clothes.
Saints.
And I think what was interesting is you talk about like creating that demand was quite interesting. So like when the person with a bit of money wanted to sell and things were actually sold out, that actually created almost a bit of exclusivity and like a demand around that.
Yeah, I mean it suddenly became the coolest thing because there was that thing where supply and demand. We did, it was all. In the 17 years I ran it, it was all organic growth. We never borrowed any money. Everything that we did, but it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's completely transformed the high street or the world of fashion.
Absolutely, it was really. And the thing is, what I think was really smart about you was implementing All Saints into the popular culture. So. I know my first experience with All Saints was seeing something on TV, on a TV show of a young person wearing it. I think it was Skins or something like that, and it was an All Saints jacket, and I thought, that's pretty cool. And then it starts kind of getting out in that way. The kids today, though, are quite interesting because, they're more socially conscious today, I think, than they ever have been. Obviously, there's class divides as well that have always been there, but like I think kids growing up now are more thinking about the garment in a different way than maybe they did in the past, right? They're actually thinking about the life cycle of it.
They do, and that's one of the reasons why 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, I launched Stuart Trevor, because my kids are now 18, 20 and 26. They don't wear anything but vintage. And it's not just because their dad's the founder of All Saints, because they raided our wardrobes fucking years ago. There is a certain amount, a specific area in that demographic that will not, they're anti-fast fashion, they're anti-super brands. My daughter had a young kid turn up wearing a Supreme puffer going, "Oh, your dad'd love this," and she was like, "No, he will not." And there's huge eco-anxiety amongst a certain demographic of that age as well. And I was mentoring young brands that have a positive social environmental impact, including like a bakery that employed victims of domestic abuse, coffee roasters that employed ex-offenders and trained them to become a barista so that they can get a job anywhere in the world, a denim company that took vintage Levi's and customized them, and they made really cool collections. I learned a lot about the fashion world and how horrendous fast fashion and all
Absolutely.
this, huge billion-dollar, there's all these billion-dollar corporations out there chasing trillion-dollar status, and they are producing something like 150 billion garments a year in production around the world. That's 40 or 50 for every human being on the planet. It's a joke. And I've been to Ghana. I've been to some of the head office and warehousing for the British Heart Foundation and the Salvation Army in the Midlands. They're dealing with 90 tons of clothing waste per day. They don't know what to do with it. It ends up getting sent off to places like Ghana or Indonesia or Chile, and there are mountains and mountains of clothes out there. A lot of it polyester, doesn't biodegrade. They can't wear it. It gets sent to Africa. In the beginning, when fast fashion and all that came out, it was they loved it. They would pay to receive bundles of this stuff, but now when they open it up and it's 40 degrees every single day there, their customer base is all the other countries in Africa, like Nigeria and Cameroon and whatever, and it's they can't wear. They're opening stuff like there's puffer jackets and parkas and hoodies and polyester acrylic sweaters and they can't wear it because it's just so. So I was talking about this and writing down all these statistics, and I showed my daughter. One of them is that every 7 seconds there's a pile of clothes the height of Mount Everest going into landfill. Wow. And she was like, "Dad, you can't write that." I was preparing a deck for the business, and she said, you can't write. And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She goes, "You can't lie." I said, that's not a lie. Why would you think that was a lie? She said, because if that was the truth, no kid on the planet would buy from Primark or ASOS or H&M or Zara. Dad, this is apocalypse. It's scary. What's it going to be like in 50 years' time? What are we going to do about it? And I was like, yeah, well, what about a clothing brand that doesn't produce any clothing?
Right, and this is the provocative question, right? The brand that produces no clothing. You've set the problem statement right there. What's the solution, Stuart? What have you been doing over the last year building this brand? What is this brand that doesn't produce any clothing?
Well, stuarttrevor.com. Have a look on stuarttrevor.com. Have a look at our Instagram at Stuart Trevor Official. We take other people's waste and we convert it by adding patches, or we add our label in it. We add a little logo. We have a little white patch that we zigzag stitch onto everything, and I sign it and date it and number it. The idea came from my daughter that if Vivienne Westwood and Malcolm McLaren did this with that seditionary stuff when they had that shop sex, and those garments are worth £10,000, £20,000 now, they'd be worth $1 million. So we thought if we can find other people's waste and turn it into gold nuggets or work of art, walking work of art, then we could really change the world. And we started talking to people like Patagonia, North Face, they all came to me and said, I love this concept. We have a warehouse full of 30,000 garments. What can we do with it? And I would go through, I've been several different times with several different businesses. Fortunately, or unfortunately for me, they went off and did it themselves. I don't really care about that. I'm just happy that I managed to give them the right direction. And they've gone off and do it. So because they all need to do something about it, because they were burning it. They were, Burberry were fined something, oh God knows how much.
Well, I was going to say, in the fashion world, generally, you do hear these stories, especially around, like sneakers and some of the other luxury brands that actually they are damaging. They would rather damage the goods or burn them or scratch them than let them actually...
I think Burberry, it was £27 million worth of clothing that they destroyed or were caught burning. I think in particular they their signature check or whatever. Yeah. They changed the colour. They had a new designer, so they're changing the colour. So then, rather than store it or think about making something really beautiful that they could give, in collaboration with some charity or whatever, they thought, I know my great idea. I'll burn the lot, and it really. Well, they got caught doing it, and it damaged their reputation as a world-leading brand. But it also damaged their reputation to their customer base. Absolutely, a lot of people just turn around and we've seen a dramatic decline in that business's success because there are so many people out there that are
conscious about this. Do you know what's interesting? So we've been recording some of the interviews as well in the podcast in the background, and we were talking about sustainability in one of the interviews, and we were saying that it's interesting that sustainability when it comes to products, it's never the only driving factor of the garment or of the product, but when it's mixed with other factors, it really kind of lights up. So just the fact that it's sustainable clothing isn't on its own the unique thing, but the fact that it's fashionable, that you've added your customization onto it, that it's something that people want to wear, that's the real kind of unique part of that, right? It's the combination of the reuse, but also the extra kind of touch that Stuart and you put on the garment. Right?
Well, we talked about that, and you're very well done for reminding me. But for me, it's all. We just want to have fun. We want what we didn't want to do was to launch some. We saw the old Greta Thunberg and how dare you and all this. We didn't want any of that negativity. We just wanted to show that we could do something really fucking cool and real rock and roll and create something take other people's waste and create something amazing. So you saw what was on that runway. We were asked if we would do it. We contacted leading model agencies and said, we don't have any budget, but we would love to do this thing. Are there any of that? We were inundated we had something like 40 models, influencers, different celebrity type influencers contact me, desperate to be a part of the show, really wanted to celebrate it and come along and did it. And it was a huge success. And every single garment on that runway is created from other people's waste.
And what's interesting, I guess, what I'm interested to find out a little bit more is about behind the curtain, how does that actually work? Because I remember you were saying, kind of conversations ahead of this, that people in the fashion world were kind of saying to you, this is crazy, who's going to actually partner with you? This is just insane. Who's actually got that much stuff? And then you flipped the question and said, actually, how many? When you've worked in the fashion brands before, how much waste are you sitting on?
I had friends of mine that I've known for years, guys that used to run Diesel, used to run All Saints, used to run Reese, used to run Ted Bates. Loads of different people came to me and said, I love your concept, but where are you going to get it from? And I just laughed and went, you've been in this industry for years. You've got warehouses full of clothes that you don't know what to do with. There's so much. I mean, there's companies like ASOS, for instance, they're 970 million turnover. They've lost 150 million, 3 years on the trot. They're buying huge amounts of stock. I know for a fact they have something like £10 million or 10 million garments in warehouses around the country. They don't know what to do with it. And we go into... So there are some of those garments that you see on there are so incredible. They're Savile Row tailored Welsh drummers' guards jackets with the white tape on them, and Mick Jagger wore them in the Rolling Stones in the 60s, and Jimi Hendrix wore these types of. And I thought they were, me personally, I also thought that they were, you can't get hold of these. And then, so what I will do is I'll search for it, and I'll contact the people, and I'll go and visit them, and I'll drive out for 4 hours to the middle of nowhere, walk into this warehouse, and it's 10 times the size of this room, and it is racked out with hundreds of them. And these companies, a lot of them, they're online now with the internet. They're selling to Japanese clients one-off, and they charge fair price for it, because they are, some of those jackets, those Savile Row Taylor jackets, they will have cost £1,200, £2,000. But I've turned up there and found like 100, and the access I have to all this stuff is unbelievable.
Well, I can imagine at this point that brands are actually reaching out to you with like ideas based on things that they can't sell. What's interesting to me as well is that like not only are you buying garments and then reworking them and selling them as your own, there's also in some cases you mentioned co-branding. So if, for example, garments already have branding, that you're partnering with the brands to actually re-release.
Sometimes we don't do anything to it. I just add my little label and the garment goes out, and it's, because I always have this. I've always had this less is more type attitude, because I see lots of other upcyclers, people there are other brands that are doing this, but quite often they just get really carried away, and they think that you've got to completely transform the garment. If you have a really beautiful garment like this, what are you going to do to it? You don't really need to do anything. So we just add a little logo, sign it and date it, and people buy into it. But it's, and quite often we're looking for more collaborations with larger businesses. So if anyone out there knows anyone or whatever, we're always open. We love to collaborate. I think it's the most important thing is to get the message out there, and to, the more people know about it, and if there are businesses that have huge amounts of, I was really excited about doing this North Face thing, and I told them exactly. I'm a very trusting person, pure on, full on ADHD. I've got lots of empathy and lots of trust in people. I'll meet them and I'll tell them what I want to do, thinking in my mind this is a guaranteed, this is what's going to happen. The next thing they announce they're doing it themselves, right. And I'm looking at it thinking, well, let's move on. Next one.
No, that
so
makes sense.
As long as they go away and do it, that's what makes me happy.
No, I think you're affecting change in the industry, and I think that's what's quite exciting about this, is that like not only is the benefit to those that are partnering with you and your brand and the consumers, but also the fact that you're actually influencing the industry. I guess then in wrapping up, like what do you think the trajectory is for the fashion industry? It's really difficult, right? Because we talked about people are being more socially conscious, so this fast fashion is quite a difficult thing, which is a good thing that we're kind of reassessing that as an industry. At the same time, the cost of living is absolutely crazy now, and for young people it's really difficult to access. So I know you mentioned like a lot of young people are looking to kind of charity shops and to finding stuff on racks. I mean, just where do you see fashion going over the next?
I mean, I don't think I do. It's not like I've set out on a mission to put these brands like Primark or whatever out of business. That's not going to happen. What is going to happen is they are going to, because it's all decided by the consumer and all that. If the consumer wasn't interested in it, none of them would make the effort. But when we are, when we realise that such a change has gone about in the last 2 to 3 years, where someone like Vinted is now the largest retailer in France. Wow. The growth is unprecedented. It shows that the end consumer is now aware, and the messages are getting out there, and they are starting to look at. I mean, everyone's got a wardrobe full of clothes they don't wear, and so the idea of being able to sell off your old clothes and then maybe buy from other people or swaps or things like that. There's so much of it going on. It's wonderful to see. I'm very proud of the fact that we were very instrumental in bringing it. Not the first person in the world that's thought of doing what we are doing. Creating a clothing brand out of other people's waste, and a clothing brand that doesn't produce any clothing. But we are kind of like, we've done it in a different way where it's really exciting and it's really fun and people really, really get into it. And we go out, we make every effort. We do things such as we're launching a perfume next week. We're launching these studded belts like the one I've got here.
Nice.
This is sex, drugs and rock and roll. We've got Love Will Tear Us Apart. We've got We Can Be Heroes. And then we have loads, and they're all made from leather, which is a byproduct of the meat industry. So it's, people said to me the other day, well, what's sustainable about that? Well, leather, if we didn't utilize leather, then, it would go to waste. So it is, we try to do everything in the most sustainable way. I mean, and of course, 100% sustainable would be not producing anything.
Of course.
But things like T-shirts and underwear and socks, no one's going to wear second-hand knickers, apart from the Japanese.
Yeah, you do hear about those vending machines, which does concern me a little bit. I guess, any closing thoughts from yourself, Stuart? I know one of the key messages that I saw that I quite liked of yours, which your focus on turning dead stock into living stock, which I quite like as a kind of tagline. Was there any closing thoughts from yourself?
Well, I think it's I'd like everybody to go away and think about this and think about, look in your own wardrobe and wonder as to and when we come into the next couple of weeks, we've got Black Friday next week, which is a disaster for every industry really. It's only huge billion-dollar corporations that benefit from it, but and everything that they have marked down as things that they've overproduced and want to get rid of, there's nothing really, but everybody's kind of like ended up the week before Black Friday, nobody buys anything because they automatically think I'm going to need some money because I'm going to find something, maybe a food processor or a computer or a TV, whatever, and then the week after it is the first week of Christmas. Those 2 weeks were the number 1 and number 2 weeks of the year for any business, and it's I think as we go forward, and I think it's really important, I think it's our duty to buy from sustainable brands, to support smaller businesses and think about, when we're buying things for our loved ones, our family and our friends or whatever, to think about what we do and don't just buy cheap crap because the world's, there's far too much cheap crap in the world. What we need to do is buy things that were made to last. I think I don't really follow him or anybody, but I know that Jimmy Carr came up with a statement I think a year or so ago, and it was, I think it was on Stephen Bartlett podcast. He said there is nothing that you can buy in a shopping mall that you will treasure in 10 years' time. And I think it's actually quite an intelligent statement, because there is, apart maybe a nice watch or whatever, but most of what you find in shopping malls or in these huge businesses is crap. None of it is quality. None of it you're going to treasure in 10 years' time. We should think about those. When we were kids and we had favourite items, a favourite jumper or a favourite. Why don't we go back to the old days where we had favourite items and buy less and buy quality and wear it for life and treasure these garments rather than just think, that'll do, any old crap.
Makes sense. And Stuart, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time. Really interested in conversation, and I think that will conclude our kind of fireside chat. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.